If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. Today we are tackling the death of Kenneka Jenkins. Now, this case has been requested and it has been discussed on the internet to a certain point, but it's not one of these incredibly famous true crime cases. For all intents and purposes, it was ruled as solved, but as always, in typical Mindshock fashion, we are going to logically and objectively examine this case and why there are certain oddities and inconsistencies that point to it being closed way too soon unless the police do indeed know far more than they have revealed. And as always in other cases, and as we see in other cases, police are very, very interested in closing cases, unfortunately more so than definitively solving cases beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what we saw here? Is there reasonable doubt here that Kenneka Jenkins may have met with foul play? Is there reasonable doubt that this was an accidental death? And regardless of what the truth really is everyone not entitled justice and closure, and at the very least, a legitimate, objective, neutral, comprehensive investigation? And that's what we're going to be after here in this episode. If you find the podcast informative and enjoy it, feel free to donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. It helps support the channel and for us to cover more and more cases, as well as follow-up episodes in our existing series. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If it's still not working, you could just go to youtube.com/Mindshock and check out the latest episodes as they are released, as well as browse our ever-growing back catalog. If you like this particular episode, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms. Keep up the awareness, not only in making sure that cases that are technically closed were legitimately solved and not just brushed under the rug in some kind of manner for the simple act of closing a case and closing the book on it. So it's not an open-ended case, and I think far too often, if this even happened one time in a case, that's far too often, but we all know this has happened more than a couple times in the history of law enforcement. So to keep the awareness up and to make sure that cases are really legitimately investigated and everything is verified, share this podcast across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. So, for the quick overview here, this occurred September 9th, 2017. So, past few years, somewhat recent, at the Crown Plaza Chicago O'Hare Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois. 19-year-old Kenneka Jenkins was found dead inside a latched freezer of the Crown Plaza Chicago O'Hare Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois, after attending a party there on September 8th, 2017. The medical examiner's report found Jenkins's death to be accidental. Alcohol and topiramate, sold under the brand name Topamax, is a medication used to treat epilepsy as well as prevent migraines. This was found in her system, thought to have hastened the effects of hypothermia sustained by Jenkins remaining inside the freezer. While the Rosemont Police Department did not suspect foul play, they stated that their investigation was incomplete. And we'll have to examine that statement because it's not often that police jurisdictions admit when their investigations are either not up to par or incomplete or open to mistakes, etc. Jenkins's family and friends criticized the initial police response, and a lawsuit was subsequently filed against the hotel and others. Kenneka Jenkins was celebrating with friends at a party that took place in room 926 of the Crowne Plaza Chicago Hotel in Rosemont, a suburb of Chicago. The party started at 11:30 p.m. on Friday, September 8th. An acquaintance who arrived at the party noticed that Jenkins appeared to be swaying back and forth as she embraced him in a hug. Several witnesses reported seeing her drink cognac, but did not see her partake of any marijuana or other drugs. Another witness reported that Jenkins, quote, wasn't acting like her usual self, end quote, noting that she would dance a little but later appeared to be sad and went to go sit down. She was briefly seen with others walking through one of the halls in the hotel. Camera footage later surfaced of Jenkins staggering near the front desk at 3:20 a.m. So, again, that witching hour, 3:30 a.m. About 1 hour later, Jenkins's friends contacted her mother, Teresa Martin, who arrived at the hotel at 5:30 a.m. to assist in the search. So, again, we have a pretty good response here. We have people reporting that they can't find her within hours over a Friday night party. How often does that happen? Usually it's the next day. Oh, by the way, they didn't show up here and here, not within immediate hours. She proceeded to knock on many guests' doors from the top floor to the bottom until a hotel employee called 911 to complain. Hotel management stated that they could not provide access to video footage from the night before until someone reported Jenkins missing to police, who officially reported her missing to hotel management 1:15 p.m. Saturday. So that's pretty good too. I mean, that's not a full 24 hours. That's roughly half day. That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. Family members later characterized the initial police response as lacking in urgency. A first check of camera footage that focused on entrances and exits turned up nothing. But at 10 p.m., police spotted footage of Jenkins stumbling through the hotel. So it seems here that 10 p.m. was when the police were looking at the footage. Her whereabouts remained unknown until she was found in the hotel's freezer and pronounced dead at 12:48 a.m. Sunday. She was found face down, lying on her side with one shoe off. There was no sign of trauma other than a small cut on her foot. The temperature inside the freezer was found to be 34 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 degree Celsius, approximately 2 hours after the doors had been left open. Okay, so there was also some inconsistencies there. But just real quick point here, I just want to bring this up. A lot of so-called true crime aficionados, or just random individuals, coincidence theorists, whatever you want to call them, they dismiss any notion of foul play if someone was either on drugs or they had mental issues or some kind of mental condition. To me, that's the silliest you can get, because these types of individuals, do their odds go up at being met with foul play or possibly being targeted by some kind of a predator when the predator knows they have some mental issues? They might not be able to either think clearly or understand danger as well as someone who's completely in their right mind and completely unencumbered by drugs or alcohol. It's really silly to write off individuals if they have mental issues or possibly some kind of drug, they're on drugs of some kind. It's just really bizarre to just write them off as if there's some kind of magical rule of the universe that states if someone has a mental condition, bipolar, on drugs, whatever the condition may be, or they're just a druggie, that means magically they can't be met with foul play and that nobody could ever murder them, or they can't be met with some kind of an accidental death as a result of another party. So there's no reason to ever search for another party. It's just really bizarre. We see this in the Elisa Lam case, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out the Mindshock podcast episodes on the Elisa Lam case, there's a lot more than meets the eye in that case. And it's just so silly to magically pretend that people with mental conditions or under the influence of drugs or alcohol can't be met with foul play. Just really, really bizarre. If anything, it increases their chances of being met with foul play. So, yeah, I just wanted to touch upon that as if, because there's people out there that think that people with mental conditions or under the influence, somehow they don't deserve justice. Their families don't deserve closure. They don't deserve an honest, objective, comprehensive, legitimate investigation into their death. Really, really bizarre. So let's continue the overview here. The investigation. The freezer, which was on and working, was described as a walk-in freezer with a walk-in cooler and was part of an unused kitchen. Lights were apparently turned off in both chambers when she entered them. Questions remained as to why the freezer was turned on, although it was reportedly being leased out to a restaurant using space in the hotel. Motion detecting security cameras showed Jenkins staggering, apparently intoxicated, through the hotel's hallways, eventually arriving at the kitchen where she rounded a corner towards the freezer. The freezer door itself was out of the camera's sight, which is quite convenient. Also, the other thing people don't really talk about, if someone let's say someone wanted to kill somebody, would they not make it look like an accident? It's really bizarre how so many individuals, coincidence theorists, whatever you want to call them, they can't comprehend that bad people are not always really stupid. Especially if they had killed others, criminal-minded individuals, they might have some experience in making things look like an accident. Again, with the Elisa Lam case as well, they might have left her clothes in the tank, or they might do certain things to make it look like an accidental death to throw the police off their trail, or simply to confuse matters. It's really bizarre how people can't even consider that possibility. It's really weird. October 6, 2017, the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled Jenkins' death an accident. The autopsy report found no illegal drugs in Jenkins' system, but her blood alcohol level was found to be 0.112. Traces of topiramate, a drug used to treat epilepsy and migraine headaches, were found in her system, although she was never prescribed this medication. Topiramate taken together with alcohol can enhance the effects of both and hasten the onset of hypothermia, the presence of which was confirmed by lesions found in Jenkins' stomach. Brain swelling was also observed, but this condition was not associated with the cause of death. The Rosemont Police Department issued a statement the same day saying that while no foul play was suspected, their investigation had not yet been completed. Jenkins' friends' stories remained inconsistent as to exactly what had happened after the party. After she went missing, one friend texted another about how Jenkins was drunk and missing. The reply came back, "Find Kenneka," and "I can't believe y'all lost her." They told Martin that Jenkins had gone downstairs with some people, but they had left her alone to go and retrieve a cell phone from one of the hotel rooms. There's a lot of inconsistencies and bizarre oddities here. So she did not stumble off on her own. She left with people. Now, we would have to assume that the police identified these individuals and interviewed them, but that is not a given, of course. We never know. Litigation. The family's attorney, Jeffrey Feiger, filed a $50 million lawsuit against the hotel and others. He displayed photos of a freezer door showing that it had a lock button from the outside and suggested someone may have inadvertently locked the freezer door. This was contradicted by the security camera, which recorded no other footage since August 30th, nor any after Jenkins's footage. The photo seemed not to be of the actual freezer door, which latched shut but apparently had no luck. A white circular handle on the inside, which would have enabled a person to exit on their own, appeared to be in good working order. The attorney asserted that the hotel had the means to lock off the kitchen area, as it had a pair of plywood doors with a padlock. Now, just real quick, on the point of the motion sensor, the motion activated security camera. Anybody who has any experience with these cameras, unless this was the most high-end, some kind of top secret military grade camera that's used in military installation maybe, regular security systems, even today, so this happened 2017, so obviously technology is moving forwards, but even today, I know a few different people who install these systems. These are not flawless systems. There's a percent error rate, with certain systems having a relatively high percent error rate, which means that if there was someone else there, that doesn't mean the camera is flawless in turning on and recording them. Now, I don't know what model system that was. If that was a relatively solid system with a low error rate, then we can say maybe that didn't happen. But if it was a particular model, particular brand that's notorious for having a somewhat high percent error rate compared to other models, we cannot exclude the possibility that there might have been other individuals there and the camera simply didn't record them. And then, of course, this is Mindshock, so we'll be going into allegations that footage was deleted as well. So, for example, if someone worked at the hotel, same thing with the Elisa Lam case, there's missing footage. Why is there missing footage? They even censored Elisa Lam's mouth when she was saying something. Why? What was she saying? And her lips could be read. So again, in an open, honest, objective, neutral investigation, there needs to be a certain amount of information available. Withholding the information, now, if there's good reason to do so, that's fine. I'm not saying there wasn't good reason to do so. I'm saying it's impossible to conclude what's going on without the information. That's the point there. So here's just a general article. This was in NewYorkDailyNews.com, October 8th, 2017. Kenneka Jenkins, who was found in a hotel freezer, died of hypothermia. A Chicago woman who was found dead in a hotel's walk-in freezer in early September died of hypothermia. Kenneka Jenkins' death was ruled an accident. Her autopsy report showed she had alcohol and topiramate, an epilepsy and migraine medication in her system, the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office said Friday. The office determined that the combination of drug and alcohol Jenkins consumed, together with the exposure to the cold, led to her death. The 19-year-old's blood alcohol level was 0.112, significantly higher than the legal 0.08 limit in Illinois. She did not have a prescription for the medicine, according to WBBM-TV. Jenkins vanished from her home after attending a party with friends at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in Rosemont on September 8th. Her body was found in the freezer on September 10th. The temperature measured in the freezer 2 hours after investigators discovered the body was 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Police released surveillance footage showing Jenkins wandering by herself through the hotel, including a kitchen area close to the freezer. Authorities suspected that she accidentally walked into the freezer, and there isn't video of her doing so. The medical examiner's office concluded that Jenkins had no interaction with anyone immediately before her death, and that there was no evidence she had suffered trauma due to abuse. So, interesting points there. So, apparently she left the party with other individuals, but supposedly she was alone immediately prior to her death, according to this particular article and investigators. It's tough. It's really tough, especially when you see these young people, 19, relatively young, and it's also heartbreaking in a different kind of way to hear some of these accounts from her friends that she was not acting normally. So she was sad. I don't know if they're trying to allege that she was suicidal. I'm not sure that's what they were doing, or that there was something bothering her. Now, if there was something bothering her, what could that be? Of course, when a woman goes missing and is met with foul play, I'm not alleging that this was foul play, I'm saying if it was foul play, again, we have to go to the FBI statistics. It's the significant other. It's either the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, or someone in that capacity. And if it's not the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, it is either a friend, acquaintance, or someone known to the victim. Now, why was she upset at this party? I would guess friends would know, her closest friends, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe she wouldn't say that. So maybe she would. Maybe she had a stalker and she was afraid to make a big deal out of it, so she didn't mention it. I mean, what percentage of individuals don't mention when they have a stalker because they're afraid of ridicule or whatnot? Or if the stalker is friends with the mutual friends and she doesn't think she would be believed, or she would think that they would think she was overreacting or whatnot, that's an issue. Also, when we have to consider that murder happens all the time. It's really weird, these individuals, these coincidence theorists that just think they automatically default to anybody who's on medication, drugs, alcohol, or has mental issues. Oh, well, they just stumbled and died or something. Not that that couldn't have happened. That happens all the time also. That happens also. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm saying that it's, unfortunately, murder is not rare. People kill people over small amounts of money, over ego, being slighted, revenge, jealousy. This is just typical human nature, basic human psychology. To pretend it just couldn't have happened, no matter what, is quite silly. Now, let's go to another theory here, which, again, the coincidence theorists and the scoffers, they think it's just an impossibility, but unfortunately, in our world, there are humans out there that are not nice people. That's one way of putting it. And human trafficking, organ trafficking, these things exist. So the coincidence theorists, they like to stick their head in the sand. They're not mentally strong enough to face these things, so it's easier for them to pretend it couldn't have happened in some of these cases. And again, I'm not saying it happened in this particular case, but organ trafficking, organ harvesting, the black market for organ harvesting, it does exist. This is just a fact of life. To deny it is quite silly. I'm going to read an article here from the International Business Times, ibtimes.com, written by Maria Voltaggio, published September 19th, 2017. Kenneka Jenkins conspiracy theory says hotel is in organ trafficking ring. Conspiracy theories about how Kenneka Jenkins died ran rampant after she was found dead in a hotel freezer on the outskirts of Chicago over the weekend. The teen attended a party at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in the village of Rosemont, Illinois, but never returned. She was found in the walk-in freezer in a desolate part of the hotel nearly 24 hours after she went missing. Since then, one of the main theories is that Jenkins was set up by her friends, Monifa Shelton and Irene Roberts, to be raped and killed. And that's really dark. Police said there was not enough evidence to indicate Jenkins' death was a homicide and did not name Shelton or Roberts as suspects. Still, the conspiracy theories continued to swirl. The latest rumor was that Jenkins was a victim of an organ trafficking ring. That's why she was found in a freezer, they said. While some people found the accusations dubious, others were convinced. Some of their comments have been posted below. This Kenneka Jenkins situation is deep. People said that the hotel is part of an organ trafficking ring. That's some real-life hostile expletive. Honestly, the most believable theory I've heard on the Kenneka Jenkins story is the organ harvesting one. Okay, so the hotel didn't respond to rumors that they were involved in an organ trafficking ring. Convinced as some netizens might be, it doesn't mean the amateur sleuths are onto anything. There are literally dozens of conspiracy theories that have been offered, and countless people who are attempting to play detective and solve the case as to what happened over there. Gary Mack, a spokesman for the Village of Rosemont, told the New York Times in a Wednesday phone interview. Our police officers are leaving no stone unturned as far as trying to put all the pieces together. Jenkins' mother, Teresa Martin, openly criticized police and said someone at the hotel killed her daughter. They think that she walked into a cooler, intoxicated, barely able to hold herself up, she said about authorities, noting doors to walk-in freezers are heavy and hard to open. I mean, that's a good point as well. I believe it was foul play involved. Martin begged for anyone who knew what happened to her daughter to speak up. Please, please, I beg you, let me know something, she said. Help me. Help me is apparently what some netizens heard Jenkins whisper in a video Roberts posted to Shelton's Facebook page the night of their friend's death. As of Thursday, the clip amassed millions of views before it was ultimately removed from her page. While social media users wanted justice for Jenkins, their amateur detective work was hindering the investigation. It's unfortunate that some of that stuff's convoluting the investigation because all those leads have got to be followed up on. But how is that unfortunate? If this is a possibility and these are real leads, why not follow up on them to rule them out if nothing else? I mean, if organ harvesting is responsible for 0.000 whatever percent of cases, you'd want to rule that out, right? I mean, this is kind of weird. Rosemont Mayor Bradley Stevens said Wednesday, as I'm sure you've seen, there's a lot of different conflicting speculation out there, so police are doing their best to come to a quick resolution, obviously. I think everyone wants to know what happened. Jenkins' mother was shown the surveillance video of Jenkins, but police did not release it to the public. We're trying to be as understanding as we can to the mom and to be as compassionate as we can, Rosemont spokesman Gary Mack told the Chicago Tribune Wednesday. Now that our detectives have had the chance to look at it, we're hopeful it will be helpful to her. Mack wouldn't reveal the contents of the video. It's unclear how authorities found Jenkins' body, and they would not reveal if there were any lacerations discovered. The hotel has offered to pay for Jenkins' funeral, spokesman Glenn Harston of the Crown Plaza told the Chicago Tribune Thursday. Our hearts go out to Kenneka's mother, her family, and friends, Harston said. We hope covering the funeral costs provides a small bit of relief for them. A cause of death was still pending. Okay. So another point I want to go over here is something else that, again, supposed true crime aficionados, coincidence theorists, or just random illogical commentators on true crime cases, what they never consider the possibility that criminals, their plans don't always go off without a hitch. I mean, and this is really, really bizarre why some people can't consider this. I mean, they fall for some of these basic black and white logical fallacies. If it was foul play, it had to have been executed exactly as envisioned by the criminal. There could never be any crime in progress or crime abandoned. It's really weird how nobody really discusses these things. But let's say if there was someone involved. Now, if one of her friends was in debt, whatever, they set her up for some organ harvesting. Maybe maybe they thought she stole someone's boyfriend, or she was involved with somebody they didn't want her to be involved. Whatever the case may be, whatever regular human drama that goes back to the dawn of human existence, as written about by Shakespeare and all these other people, just basic human psychology, basic human drama. There are individuals out there that are just, again, not nice people. That's one way to put it. If they set her up to have her organs harvested for a big payday, either someone knew somebody who knew somebody, and if one of those individuals happens to work at the hotel, who knows? Maybe they have law enforcement connections. Again, how many times, you can call it conspiracy theory, but it's simply corruption investigation. And how often has corruption investigation turned up ties to law enforcement? It's becoming more and more uncovered these days, and then we have to also imagine how much of law enforcement corruption will remain uncovered in decades past where there wasn't a paper trail, where there weren't security cameras, and it was covered up solidly, and it will never be known. So if the amount that's known now is already so much, it's kind of insane. And by so much, I mean, what would be a lot? I mean, more than zero would be too much, right? But anyway, there's plenty of cases with police corruption. They're coming out in the open more and more all the time nowadays. So is it out of the realm of possibility some higher up at the hotel has law enforcement connections, high up in law enforcement or government officials involved in human and or organ harvest, trafficking, organ harvesting, all of these things? But even if not, even if it's a small timer at the hotel involved with this, is it possible her friends possibly, let's say, even killed her, put her in the freezer? If it was someone working at the hotel, they would have known where the camera was and what the field of view of the camera is. So if they did help her along, let's put it that way, and maybe they drugged her with something that didn't show up, but if she wasn't prescribed the medication, did they give her the medication as trying to drug her? Maybe they gave her the wrong medication. Maybe they wanted to drug her with something else. Who knows? Maybe they wanted to roofie her, but it was a different drug. They were given a different drug by a different dealer. Again, even humans are not perfect. Criminals are not perfect either. Drug dealers are not always 100% perfect. Drugs could get mixed up. I mean, this really isn't that mind-shocking. But regardless of how it happened, if they had put her in the freezer for the intention of having her organs harvested, whether they were or they weren't, so if there's some kind of cover-up where they were and we don't know about it, or whatever was not released. But let's say they weren't, but the intention was to harvest her organs, sell them on the black market, whatnot. Something went wrong, people got spooked, someone didn't show up, or they were afraid, or they knew about the security camera, they were worried about being caught, they got cold feet. So whoever was responsible for whatever the first stage was, whether it was her friends or other parties, they completed the first stage, which was either killing her or incapacitating her and putting her in the freezer, and then the second stage was never executed for whatever reason. Is that out of the realm of possibility? Again, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what's happened. I'm just saying it's very strange how some people can't consider the possibility that the plans of criminals might go wrong and might become abandoned. That's my point there. So here's a post by the person that actually requested this case on the Mindshock Patreon. I have a soft spot for Kenneka Jenkins Martin. Later, her last name changed to say that it was Martin and not Jenkins, when her father and brother are both named Jenkins. She was found dead inside a freezer. That freezer was inside a walk-in, inside a kitchen that was under construction and out of use. The freezer door was said to have shut behind her, and she was too intoxicated to push the glowing emergency release button to get herself out of the freezer once she felt cold. Which is kind of interesting. I mean, how often do people walk into freezers of all places, though? Like, you'd have to think, if she was out of it, drunk and stumbling, the doors to the freezer are relatively heavy. Not that she couldn't open them, but would you take a path of least resistance if you're drunk and out of it? Would you just collapse wherever? I don't know, just things to think about. Also, there's a video of an officer crime scene technician opening the door and letting the freezer that she had just been in shut. This door would not shut without pulling it shut from the inside or pushing it shut from the outside. Interesting. She came in with pretty, straight, sew-in hair extension. Very expensive hair, and it's obvious when hair is expensive or cheap. And when she was found, she then had what appeared to be a wig on her head that had bangs that was all chopped up. When the style she had when she was walking to the freezer had zero bangs, it had then changed from perfectly straight hair to wavy curly, and it looked like it was placed on her head like it was an afterthought, and whoever may have done that so was not even trying to hide the fact that her hair had obviously changed somehow, some way. There is so much more that I found, followed other people, finding and validated for myself as being truthful. It's really sad, in my opinion, because her case gets so little attention from most of the public. The police and their supporters may say accidental death by walking into a freezer and lying down to die, but there is a huge portion of the population that doesn't believe that story for 1 second and can smell something off a mile away. Okay, so interesting points there. There are definitely inconsistencies, and we have to regard the model of the particular refrigerator. We have to regard the model of the motion activated video security camera and the possibility that that's not flawless, or the possibility that there exists footage that has not been released that shows other individuals. So personally, I, again, don't look at autopsy photos or any of that stuff. That's not quite my cup of tea. I'm into the logical analysis aspect of true crime, so I will rely on other people's descriptions. Here's a Reddit post. Apparently, she was missing one shoe. I can't find here whether or not they found the other shoe. Now, here's a couple of posters that described her partially undressed. I saw a lot of claims that she was partially undressed, but the photos taken of her in the freezer were released to the public, and those settled any suspicions I had of foul play. She has all her clothes, but she may have started to undress because her shoe is missing. You can see it next to her. And she has a cut on her foot. It looks like she probably did that to herself, trying to take off her shoe while drunk and freezing. I heard a lot of stuff about her not being able to open the freezer door by herself, but looking at the pictures, it looks like a regular single-door walk-in freezer with a pull lever. It looks like the typical walk-in freezer at most restaurants. I've worked at quite a few restaurants, and I've never had an issue opening them by myself. Although being drunk and out of it on medication, who knows? Another poster here, it's because she wasn't wearing a shirt. I don't think most people make that comment realize that she was wearing the bra without a shirt to this party. Someone else theorized she took the shoe off to bang on the door of the refrigerator with the shoe for help. Interesting. An assessment of the video footage here. I don't know what I believe. The surveillance footage is edited so carelessly, it's hard not to wonder. It skips minutes, and someone edited the way she walked over the course of about 10 frames because it was obviously warped and it was impossible she moved like that. Alright, so let's take a look at these surveillance videos. So this is one from the kitchen. I mean, one does have to wonder whether she was drugged and who drugged her. So she looks out of it, but she doesn't look that out of it. She does not look completely 100% out of it. In other footage, she looks significantly more out of it, which is also a bit strange. She's actually walking more sober-like in the kitchen than in the hallways. In the hallway, she almost fell over a banister. So, yeah, this is not a state that would give one superhuman strength like PCP or some of these other drugs. This is more of a drunken, stumbling, not knowing where you are, probably loose and relaxed muscles, so it would probably be harder to open a refrigerator door in this state than in another state. And it looks like she doesn't really know where she is. And then there were also conflicting reports of the freezer actually being unplugged. So was it plugged or not plugged in? And then also keep in mind, so she appeared relatively normal in the videos with her friends, I believe, posted to Facebook prior to the party or at the party. So at some point she was drugged. I mean, well, unless the theory is that she took the drugs herself of her own will, either knowing or not knowing what they were. Her friends just said, "Oh, here, take these," and she took them, or she was drugged against her will. Either way, she was not in this state prior to the party. Although I suppose one could argue if she's on this medication and then she drinks a lot, it would exacerbate this state. I suppose that's also a possibility, but she was not prescribed those drugs, so that is what we know. So pretty tough to figure out. So pretty tough to figure out what to make of this. So we do have footage of her walking as well through the hotel, and she's walking completely normal before either the drugging or whatnot. And she looks like she's completely aware of her. She almost looks like a completely different person in the other videos. So I guess it comes down to either was she already on the medication and a certain amount of alcohol caused that result, or did she take the drugs willingly, not knowing what they were, offered to either by her friends or maybe other individuals at the party, not her friends, maybe friends of friends, acquaintances, who knows. And yeah, it is pretty bizarre, because if you can't see the freezer in the footage, how do they know she wandered to the freezer by herself? I mean, that seems like a little bit of a leap, particularly if they're not releasing certain details where she was with other people as she left the party. Now, clearly in the footage here, she's by herself, but when did that happen? Where did the other people go? And how do we know there weren't either people following her that were aware of where the cameras were? Or maybe they were captured on camera, because we only got a little bit of footage released here. There's not that much footage that has been released here, so what do we make of that footage? It's tough. It's tough, but it seems silly to just completely write off, oh yeah, definitely accidental death. I mean, this is not going to stand up in court. Do we have irrefutable evidence that she herself, by herself, opened the heavy freezer doors, made heavier by her current state, and a freezer which may or may not have been plugged in at the time? I don't know. Was it plugged in afterwards? Did someone shut the door after her? Did someone hold the door shut after she was already in for a certain period of time? And she wasn't found for quite some time. Was the freezer plugged in and out? Did they dust for fingerprints? We have to wonder whether this investigation was legitimately done. Some other posts on Reddit here. I do think her friends were up to no good and know more than what they are telling. I think it's possible she was drugged by them and then the freezer accident happened. So yeah, let's not fall for black and white fallacies. Perhaps it's possible they drugged her, there was other funny business going on, and that she also got into an accident. But again, that accident needs to be proved. Definitively proved. Not theorized based on what cannot be seen on video cameras. A response here, this is what I suspect. That video doesn't prove one way or another what happened. Just that she was able to walk and was in the vicinity of the freezer. It is plenty possible that she was the victim of some other crime, negligence, or prank gone wrong, and honestly, I think the wilder conspiracies obfuscate the more plausible possibilities. And of course, it's it's kind of silly to pretend to know what's more or less plausible with incomplete information. I mean, that's the coincidence theorists always fall for that one. Now, you can't ask, was the hotel negligent or were her friends mucking around without being shouted down and called a conspiracy theorist, because people are going around talking about organ sacrifices. That in and of itself, I mean, these are straw man fallacies, ad hominem logical. I mean, these are all logical fallacies. Why not objectively, neutrally examine every theory without appeals to incredulity and all these other fallacies? This person asks, as for the organ harvesting thing, if she was killed for her organs, why were her organs still inside her body? Again, not all criminals successfully execute every plan. Criminals are capable of getting cold feet. I'm not sure why coincidence theorists are unable to wrap their mind about that very simple concept. So yeah, there's seem to be issues with her friends, and again, the so-called friends here, if they're into other illegal stuff, drugs, whatever, they can come off as shady even if they weren't responsible for what happened to her here. But that does, we have to keep that in mind as well. Someone else theorized here, I don't know, maybe her friends, while super drunk, dared her to go into the freezer or something. Huh. Another person chimed in here. There have been too many recent stories about female friends drugging other female friends so that they can be raped. It is sick and disgusting, but there are sick and disgusting people in this world. And there are indeed. That's an unfortunate fact of reality, but that's why we can't rule anything out, really, with such limited information. But the dare, that's an interesting theory as well, because if you were the friends of someone who died, would you admit, oh yeah, we were involved in drunken pranks that got our friend killed? Please hold us legally liable, particularly if they have other things on their record, or they're dealing in drugs, whatever the case may be. Someone else chimed in here, I wonder why she couldn't open the door. I worked in food service and used to prop the door open when I went into a walk-in fridge or freezer because of all the TV shows I had seen where the doors automatically locked when they closed. This didn't happen in real life to any of the freezers I have been in, at least. So is she saying there that the door would have remained open? We did, however, lock them when we closed up for the day, as this hotel should have done if they weren't using the freezer right then. If it was locked, she wouldn't have gotten in the first place. I guess if she was weak as a result of being drunk, maybe she just couldn't get the door open, or she assumed it was locked and just kicked at it, trying to get someone to hear and let her out. Sad either way. It's kind of bizarre, though, because that works both ways. That works in both opening to get in as well as opening to get out. So, I don't know. And supposedly the handle, the latch is glowing on the inside for those particular emergency situations. So that way even a drunk person would notice something glowing. Ooh, shiny object. Another commenter with experience of this particular drug, she was taking Topamax, an anti-seizure migraine medication that has the well-deserved nickname Dopamax because it can interfere with reasoning, memory, and overall cognitive functioning. Combined with alcohol, it pretty much makes you a zombie. Someone else theorized this. If the door was already open, the more I think about this, the more I wonder if it was even closed. Those doors aren't crazy heavy, but it would completely eradicate the argument of her being too drunk or weak to open it. They already skipped protocol by not locking the fridge. Plus it was empty, so it's not wild that they might not even have closed it. Now, this is an interesting theory. If the refrigerator door was open and the refrigerator unplugged, not in operation, that definitely increases the likelihood of a drunk and mentally out of it individual wandering into the fridge. But then that opens the question, would she close the door in after herself? And even if she did, if the fridge is not on, that means somebody would have plugged it in. Now, is it possible there's no foul play involved and the next day someone plugged it in because they just noticed, oh, look, the fridge is unplugged, it should be plugged in, and they plugged it in not knowing she was inside? Is that what happened? I mean, that actually seems to be a more plausible theory than the one being peddled thus far. So that's quite interesting, if that's what happened and it was completely accidental and her friends were not involved in any kind of foul play. It's very, very difficult to make heads or tails of this particular case because of these unknown variables and the missing footage, the way everything was handled. But if that happened, I mean, there needs to be a certain amount of closure. If that's what really happened, and they even know who plugged in the refrigerator if it was unplugged, and that caused her death, I mean, this all needs to be brought out in the open, at least for her family to have closure if they don't want to make it public. I mean, I don't know the legal implications of all those things. Regardless, this case does seem to be a bit less strange than the Elisa Lam case. There's a whole bunch of weird oddities, coincidences, the haunted Cecil Hotel. Those are stacked a mile high. With this one, there are less factors to decipher, but ultimately we still have to decipher them. So here are a couple more comments here that all very possible. Ultimately, I think ending up in the freezer was an accident. But I do think there's at least a fair possibility that she was drugged at the party. Based on the surveillance footage and what I saw of her behavior, availability to teenagers, likely lifted from a parent's prescription, and personal and anecdotal evidence of its effects, especially on women, and especially with alcohol, I'd say the drug is likely Ambien. Everything I saw in surveillance is consistent with the behavior of someone reacting badly to Ambien, especially the determined, overconfident way she was traversing the hotel and the minimally apparent intoxication. Whether they did it as a prank, sort of let's just see what happens thing, or for another nefarious purpose, and she walked out before they could complete their intended course of action, I can't say. And that's a very astute comment. So, what Ambien, not Ambien, whatever, this other drug, Topamax, Dopamax, regardless, if they stole it from either a parent or some other, maybe they just took it from, maybe somebody left it in the hotel room, who knows where they got it, or they got it from a friend, and they were just screwing around. There's two types of pranks. There's the screw around prank, oh, let's give it to her, let's see what happens, ha ha ha, or something far more nefarious. Okay, let's if they wanted to set her up to get raped or whatever, or even more nefarious than that for organ harvest, whatever the case may be. It could have possibly been a more innocent prank because, again, if you think back to being a teenager, early 20s, for some people, possibly late 20s and even 30s, and maybe even 40s, who knows, the screw around, let's see what happens when, spiking the fruit punch bowl. I mean, these kind of pranks go back a long time. Is it really outside the realm of possibility that these young adults, teenagers and young adults, would be screwing around? And she just left. So regardless of whether in the party videos she's out of it, she's unhappy, who knows? And she just walks out of there, but supposedly she walked out with people. I mean, that was what the early statements had said, so she did not walk out alone. I mean, this is what complicates the case. We really don't know, but then she ends up alone somehow? And is it out of the realm of possibility a shady hotel employee would take advantage of a young woman wandering alone, apparently intoxicated or drugged up, not knowing what's going on? It's a little bit strange to deny the possibility that there are predators out there that are looking to take advantage of people in this situation. So are they more or less is a predator more or less likely to take advantage of a young woman who's intoxicated and out of it, or completely sober and ready to scream and fight at any moment? So again, I just really don't see the coincidence theorists how they just immediately write off any possibility of foul play because she was drunk and or mentally out of it and or on drugs. So there's a few people uploaded various videos here. Someone actually did the full walk from room 926 all the way to the freezer and locked themselves in the freezer. And it's basically just a really easy push button to open the freezer once you're in. It's a bright white, but it does look like the door is swinging closed after it's open. Now, the last point I want to make here, so I did look at a couple of different psychic interpretations and things of that nature. They had some interesting theories as well that if she could have been dead before being put in the freezer, and that someone else put her in the freezer, either dead or alive, there was another altercation somewhere. And possibly let's say they were trying to get rid of the body, but then someone else came, and then they put the body in the freezer instead to make it look like she either accidentally got in there or simply put it in there to be moved later. And there's still more to go over with this case, so I'll have to do a follow-up episode. There's a couple more theories out there, a couple more inconsistencies regarding the police investigation, but that's the main overview for now. We went over a bunch of different theories. And actually, there's yet another one. I forgot to go over this. Someone chimed in here. Although it may not be the case, I think it's worth noting that a drug like GHB, roofies, may have been undetectable in her system by the time she died. It is processed through the bloodstream very quickly. Not only that, but because it occurs naturally post-mortem in higher levels, it's very hard to test for even if it was present. It's not only used as a date rape drug, it's also being used recreationally more and more. Used with alcohol, it's incredibly dangerous. It also causes profuse sweating, then a coma-like state. Just a theory, but an important drug sometimes overlooked in these types of cases. That's an interesting point, too, just based on the time her body was found, based on it's unknown at exactly what time she was either by her own volition or otherwise placed in the freezer. All this time later, would it be detected depending on the dosage that she got and whether or not she took it willingly or not? And if we couple that with the other medication, the Topamax, what's going on here? It's really, really bizarre. But if she was feeling incredibly hot due to the drugs, would that explain her wanting to go into the freezer? Would she even know it was a freezer in her state? Again, there's a lot of unanswered questions here. And the more I look at the case, I mean, there are some conspiracy theory rabbit holes that go a bit deep. There was an individual known as Zach who apparently died. Some people allege that he was killed after taking a look at the case, and apparently Kenneka was killed by guards or maintenance people that worked there. I don't know, quite bizarre. But the friends at the party, the live streaming, there's some people allege that you can hear some kind of an assault in the background. It's all quite bizarre. But there's also a moment in that video where they say that Kenneka isn't there. So if they're just covering for it, if somebody was talking on the live in the Facebook chat or whatever, asking for her, she wasn't there. So had she already left? And then of course we have the timestamps in the security cameras. Of course, those are not usually accurate. They're not necessarily in sync with other cameras either. It's all very, very difficult. So I know I was gonna end this a little earlier, but I keep finding some interesting things here as I'm looking through the case. And apparently, so the security people, maintenance people, if this was connected somehow to her so-called friends at the party, if they were gang affiliated and possibly knew people that worked the night shift there at the hotel, does that cover all the bases? Here's a YouTube commenter from a year ago. I think the kids at the party were not her real friends and set her up and had connections with third shift staff, security, and maintenance. A reply here. The party was gang infested, so no one will talk. Monifa even lied to Kenneka Jenkins' mom about where they left her at. Why, if no involvement? And this Zach researcher believed she was left in a hallway and then she went looking for a restroom. And then apparently, this could theoretically make sense and cover some bases if she was drugged and if her friends possibly knew someone who was working the night shift or more than one individual. And why did they particularly choose that exact hotel? I don't know if those details were ever released, but apparently the Zach individual, apparently his home was raided and they took videos, either security tape copies that he got. I don't know. Bizarre. Other people believe this was gang retaliation. And here's another comment. Based on other videos and information, I believe this was either a gang initiation or retaliation. Supposedly, Kenneka was targeted because she provided information against someone or because of her brother's shady dealings with a gang or gangs. There's a video posted that was filmed prior to the night of the party where Kenneka is at a community event attended by alleged gang members. And one can clearly be heard saying, "Shorty dead." Gang culture dominates Chicago like it does in LA, and many people in Kenneka's circle have either personal ties to members or their own affiliations. So it is entirely possible and probable that this was a setup for the purpose of either initiation or revenge. The idea that her death was for organ harvesting isn't practical for the simple fact that organs must be taken from a living human body in an appropriate manner to remain viable for transplantation. They would want to keep her alive at least for the time needed to properly procure her organs. If people at the hotel are in cahoots with the biocenter, why would they risk exposure by allowing her to be killed or left there? Why would they kill her without taking any organs? And just the counterpoint on that is they were going to, but they couldn't. It got interrupted. Maybe other people were walking around, maybe even a police officer, who knows, or a security guard, someone that was not part of the crew that was executing this. But the gang initiation theory is interesting, particularly if there were people involved that worked at the hotel, which is why the hotel was chosen. Someone possibly with even access to the security footage that could manipulate, edit, delete it if that's what was done. And yeah, if this video prior to that night with other gang members, if that's legitimate, that does open the door to some kind of gang affiliation, gang initiation, gang retaliation options. Theories. Do the police know about this? Perhaps they know all this. Perhaps they did solve it per se. But again, we have cases where police will not press charges for a certain crime because they're going after individuals for other crimes. So if they just wanted to kind of shut this thing down quickly, is that how they would have done it? And they're still investigating these individuals in connections with other crimes, maybe multiple murders, drug travel, all these bigger charges that they don't want to let go. And maybe they will tack on this particular Kenneka Jenkins charge at a later time if they're not corrupt or incompetent. Then maybe that is the plan. And one more point here. Again, this is a rumor. Supposedly, Rosemont allowed the night watchman to leave the country. Why have they not confronted that issue? And if I'm not mistaken, he clearly had bruises, a scraped face, and hands, and nothing has been said. I also believe these kids did have something to do with it also, if nothing else, to lure her. I cannot forget the chant those kids did in that room. They set that young girl up on their level and got a few dollars in their hands. When they were done with her, she ended up in a freezer. And these are just YouTube comments. People have done various research based off of rumors. I don't know how much of this was corroborated. Again, I'm not saying any of this is true or untrue. And here's the darkest theory of all that I will close this out with. Another commenter here on YouTube. It was a setup. Her homegirls were the ones that set her up. They drugged her. She was trying to get away from them because she knew something was wrong and she thought she could trust the security. But the homegirls knew the security guard. And they're not messing with those security tapes, overlapping and editing them and deleting them for no reason. So there seems to be, a lot of funny business in this case. I don't think it's a quick open shut case. I think there's a lot of reasonable doubt to the conclusions that have been brought forth. And I think more investigation is needed, and I'll be covering this case more as well. I mean, there's a few can of worms here that I did not anticipate. And this is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure, and we go over cases in comprehensive and logical fashion, trying not to fall for any logical fallacies. Hope you found another edition of Mindshock True Crime informative. If you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. You can also just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. To keep awareness up in this case, and that it may not be as solved as purported, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. This is Bruce McGuire, signing off. Catch you guys next time.